The chamber erupted into chaos. Species from across the galaxy started shouting at once, their voices blending into a cacophony of anger, confusion, and demands. Vexthal tried to grab Day, but the sword pulsed again, creating a barrier of light that pushed everyone back several feet. Enough! Kormaz's voice cut through the noise like a blade. His skin had turned deep purple, which meant he was using his full authority as council overseer. Everyone stand down now. The shouting died to angry murmurs. Kormaz approached Day slowly, his large eyes studying both the human and the sword with intense focus. Can you truly not release it? He asked. Day concentrated, trying again to open his hand. The sword might as well have been fused to his palm. It's like it's part of me now. I don't think it's coming off. Then we have a situation that requires careful consideration. Kormaz turned to address the crowd. This chamber is now sealed by Coalition authority. No one enters or leaves until we understand what has happened. Guards secure the perimeter. Over the next several hours, the temple filled with scientists, diplomats, and security personnel. Hay worked tirelessly on the new glyphs while Rin ran scan after scan on Day and the sword. Jin stayed close, his hand never far from his sidearm, watching for threats. Sol Kim arrived just before dawn. She was one of Earth's top scientists, specializing in xenobiology and neural interfaces. Her equipment cases were carried in by security personnel, and she set up a mobile laboratory right there in the chamber. Let me see your hand, she said to Day. All business. He held out his hand with the sword. Sol ran a scanner over it, her face growing more amazed by the second. Incredible. The sword has integrated with your nervous system. I'm reading a direct neural connection, but there's no physical interface. It's like the weapon is communicating with your brain on a quantum level. Can you remove it? Ambassador Na asked. She'd been standing in the corner, her arms crossed, radiating disapproval. Not without potentially killing him. Maybe not even then. Sol looked at Day with something like pity. You're stuck with it, I'm afraid. What does it do? Asked Lumina. The crystalline being had been studying the sword's energy signature. Beyond bonding to this human? It shows me things, Day said. He'd been seeing images all night, flashes of information pouring into his mind. Star maps, coordinates, a location. Hay looked up from her translation work. The home of the predecessors. The inscription mentions it. The sword is a key, and it's showing you where to use that key. Where? Vexthal demanded. Day closed his eyes, letting the images flow. The sword was patient, showing him the same information over and over until he understood. A star system about 200 light-years from here. The coordinates are burned into my mind now. I couldn't forget them if I tried. This is unacceptable, Vexthal growled. The Coalition has searched for predecessor sites for centuries, and now a human, one of the newest species to join us, claims the right to their homeworld? I didn't claim anything, Day said tiredly. The sword chose me. I don't understand why any more than you do. Perhaps I can explain, Hai said. She looked exhausted but excited, her tablet covered in translation notes. I've been reading the new glyphs. They tell the story of the predecessors' final days. Everyone turned to listen. The predecessors knew they were leaving. They don't say where or why, but they knew. So they created tests, scattered across the galaxy. Each test was designed to identify a specific trait they valued. This test, the Blade of Choosing, was meant to find species with true individual will. But many species have individual members, Lumina protested. Individual members, yes, but not individual will. Hay pulled up a comparison chart. Look at the data we collected from all the attempts. Every species that tried has some form of collective decision-making or strong instinctual programming. The hive species share thoughts. The Saros are driven by territorial instincts. Even the Aquarians make major decisions through consensus. Sol nodded slowly. Humans are unusual. We have very little instinctual programming compared to most species. We can choose to act against our biology, our culture, even our own self-interest. It's what makes us both dangerous and adaptable. So the sword was looking for that, Rin said. The ability to make truly independent choices. More than that, Hay corrected. The ability to choose your own path even when authority figures forbid it. Even when it's dangerous or illogical. Day didn't try to claim the sword because his government told him to. He tried because he chose to, despite orders to the contrary. Ambassador Na's face went red. Are you saying the predecessors valued disobedience? I'm saying they valued free will. The inscription is clear. The inheritors of will are those who choose their own path. That's what Day did. He chose. The chamber fell silent. Day felt the weight of dozens of eyes on him. The sword hummed quietly in his hand, warm and alive. Kormaz broke the silence. The Coalition Council must be consulted. This is a matter of the highest importance. The location of the predecessor homeworld could contain knowledge, technology, or dangers beyond our understanding. The human should be detained, Vexthal said. The sword studied and removed. You heard Saul? Jin stepped forward, his military bearing evident. The sword can't be removed. And Day is the only one who knows the coordinates. Then we'll extract them from his mind. No. The voice came from an unexpected source. Ownbike had arrived while everyone was distracted. She was Earth's senior counselor, a woman in her 70s with steel-gray hair and eyes that had negotiated 100 treaties. You will not harm one of my people. If you try, Earth will withdraw from the coalition entirely. The threat hung in the air. Earth was small, new, but they'd contributed enough technology and resources that their withdrawal would hurt. Kormaz raised his hands. Peace, no one will be harmed. But we must decide what happens next. Over the next 3 days, the debate raged. Representatives from every major coalition species arrived on Cathera Prime. The small dig site became a massive political gathering, with hundreds of ships in orbit and thousands of beings on the surface. Day stayed in the temple chamber, surrounded by guards and scientists. The sword never left his hand. He couldn't eat without awkwardly using his other hand. He couldn't sleep deeply because the sword kept showing him visions of the predecessor homeworld. Rin brought him food and kept him updated on the political situation. It's not good. Half the coalition wants you to lead an expedition immediately. The other half wants the sword destroyed and you imprisoned. What does Earth want? We're divided too. Ambassador Na thinks you've created a disaster. Counselor Yoon thinks you've given Earth an opportunity. What do you think? Day asked. Rin sat down beside him. I think the predecessors left this test for a reason. They wanted someone who could choose freely to find their homeworld. That means they wanted someone who would make their own decisions about what to do with what they find. So I get to decide? Maybe. Or maybe you just get to be part of the decision. Either way, you can't let the coalition bully you into anything. On the 4th day, Kormaz called a general assembly. Every species sent representatives. The temple chamber was packed with beings of every shape and size. We have debated long enough, Kormaz announced. The human Daikang has been chosen by a predecessor artifact. The sword cannot be removed, and he alone knows the coordinates to their homeworld. We must decide how to proceed. The coalition demands access to this knowledge, said a Mantis warrior representative. It belongs to all species, not one human. Earth refuses to surrender its citizen, Counselor Yoon replied coldly. Whatever happens next, Daikang will be involved. Then we propose a joint expedition, said a cloud singer, their voice like music. Let all species participate. Let us journey to the predecessor homeworld together. Vexthal stood up. And if the human refuses? If he decides to keep this discovery for Earth alone? All eyes turned to Day. He felt the sword pulse in his hand, warm and reassuring. It wasn't telling him what to do. It wasn't controlling him. It was simply waiting for him to choose. Day stood up slowly. His voice was quiet, but in the silent chamber everyone heard him clearly. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be chosen. But here I am, holding a sword that belonged to the most advanced civilization in galactic history, and that sword is showing me the location of their home. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The predecessors valued choice, free will, the ability to decide your own path. So I'm going to make a choice. I'm going to lead an expedition to their homeworld. But not for Earth alone. Not for any one species. He looked around the chamber, meeting eyes of every color and shape. Any species that wants to come can join us, but only if they come in peace. Only if they agree to share whatever we find. The predecessors left this test because they wanted someone who understood the value of free choice. I choose to share what we discover, because that's what I believe they would have wanted. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some shouted agreement, others protest. But slowly, gradually, a consensus began to form. Kormaz nodded slowly. A joint expedition. All species as equals. All discoveries shared. This is acceptable to the coalition. Earth agrees, Counselor Yoon said. Even Vexthal, after a long pause, gave a reluctant nod. Day felt something shift in the sword. A sense of approval, maybe, or recognition. The 44th species failed just after sunset. It was a being from the Neural Network Syndicate, a collective intelligence spread across multiple bodies. When it approached the sword, the glyphs blazed bright green, then purple, cycling through a beautiful pattern. But like all the others, the sword wouldn't budge. The being's many bodies slumped in defeat and shuffled out of the temple. The gathered crowd dispersed slowly, disappointment hanging heavy in the air. Ambassador Na looked satisfied as she retired to her quarters. One more failure meant one more day that Earth didn't have to risk embarrassment. Day watched from the shadows near the temple entrance. Beside him stood Rin and Jin. They'd been planning all day, working out every detail. The security rotation changes in 20 minutes, Jin whispered. He'd memorized the entire schedule. Tay Lim is on duty tonight. Tay was another human, a security officer who'd been with the expedition from the beginning. More importantly, he was Jin's friend. They'd served together before joining the coalition. Will he help us? Day asked. He'll look the other way. That's all we need. The camp grew quieter as beings from dozens of species settled in for the night. The environmental domes glowed softly against the dark sky. Cathera Prime's twin moons rose above the horizon, casting silver light across the ruins. Rin checked her tablet. The recording equipment is on a scheduled maintenance cycle right now. We've got a 30-minute window where nothing is being actively monitored. 30 minutes, Day repeated. His heart was pounding. That should be enough. Are you scared? Rin asked gently, terrified. Good. That means you're thinking clearly. She smiled at him. But Day, you don't have to do this. We can still walk away. Day thought about the white flash, about Hayes' translation of the prophecy, about everything humanity had accomplished by taking chances. No, this is the right choice. I can feel it. Jin checked his chronometer. Time to move. They walked toward the temple entrance as casually as possible. In the darkness, they were just three humans taking an evening stroll. Tay Lim stood guard at the entrance, his face carefully neutral as they approached. Evening, Tay, Jin said quietly. Evening. Tay's eyes met Jin's for a brief moment. An understanding passed between them. I need to check the perimeter on the east side. Equipment malfunction. Should take about 30 minutes. That's unfortunate timing, Jin replied, matching his formal tone. Very unfortunate. Tay walked away without looking back. The temple entrance stood open and unguarded. Day, Rin, and Jin slipped inside. The interior was dark except for the glowing glyphs. They pulsed with soft blue light just like always. The sword stood in its altar at the center of the chamber, waiting. It had waited for millions of years. It could wait a little longer. I'll keep watch at the entrance, Jin said. If anyone comes, I'll signal you. Rin pulled out her tablet. I'm recording everything. Whatever happens, we'll have data. Day walked forward alone. His footsteps echoed in the vast chamber. As he got closer to the altar, the glyphs began to change. Blue shifted to gold. Then the rapid flash of white, just like before. Then back to blue. It's happening, Rin breathed. The sequence. Just like the first time. Day stopped at the edge of the altar. Up close, the sword was even more beautiful than he remembered. The blade seemed to contain galaxies, swirling colors that moved and shifted. The hilt felt familiar somehow, like something from a half-remembered dream. He thought about all the species that had tried before him. Warriors and scholars and telepaths and collective minds. All of them failed. What made him different? What made humans special? Then he realized the answer. Nothing made him special. Nothing made humans better than any other species. But humans had something unique. The ability to choose their own path. Even when it went against logic or instinct or orders from authority. Every species that had tried to claim the sword had done so because their culture or biology or programming told them they should be able to. The Soros tried because they were strong. The hive communes tried because they were numerous. The telepaths tried because they were powerful. But Day was trying simply because he chose to. Not because anyone told him to. Not because his biology demanded it. Not because Earth would benefit. He was trying because he, Day Kang, individual human being, decided this was what he wanted to do. The blade of choosing. The inheritors of will. It wasn't about worthiness. It was about choice. Day reached out and touched the sword. The glyphs exploded with light. Not blue or gold or white. All colors at once, a blinding rainbow that filled the entire chamber. Rin gasped behind him. Jin shouted something from the entrance, but Day couldn't hear him over the sudden roaring sound that filled his ears. The sword hummed beneath his fingers. It felt warm, alive, like it was recognizing him. The temple itself began to vibrate, a deep thrumming that Dave felt in his chest. He wrapped his hand around the hilt. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for him, or maybe made for any being that understood what it meant to choose freely. Dave pulled. The sword slid free from the stone like a hot knife through butter. There was no resistance, no effort required. It simply came loose, as if it had been waiting all this time for someone to understand the test. The moment the blade cleared the stone, everything changed. The glyphs on the walls began spinning, reorganizing themselves into new patterns. The floor beneath Dave's feet lit up with lines of light, spreading outward like cracks in ice. The ceiling opened, panels sliding back to reveal the night sky above. And across the entire planet of Cathara Prime, dormant systems awakened. Buried machinery that had slept for millions of years hummed to life. Ancient power sources activated. The dead world began to breathe again. Alarms started blaring across the camp. Day heard shouting, running footsteps, the sound of weapons being powered up. The entire expedition was converging on the temple. "Day, we need to go," Jin shouted from the entrance, but Day couldn't move. The sword in his hand was showing him things. Images flooded his mind. Vast cities of the predecessors, beings of incredible beauty and power, star maps showing the entire galaxy, and at the center of it all, a location, coordinates, a place the sword wanted him to see. "Day," Rin grabbed his arm. "We have company." He turned to see the temple entrance flooding with people. Vextal burst through first, his eyes wild with anger and confusion. Behind him came Ambassador Na, Kormaz, Hai, and what looked like half the expedition team. "What have you done?" Vextal roared. The sword pulsed in Day's hand, and suddenly he understood something else. The sword wasn't just a test. It wasn't just a key. It was a bond. The moment he pulled it free, it connected to him on a level deeper than physical. He couldn't drop it if he tried, and no one else could take it from him. "I took the test," Day said calmly, surprised by how steady his voice was. "And I passed." Ambassador Na looked furious. "You disobeyed direct orders. You've compromised Earth's position in the coalition. You've started a diplomatic incident that could take years to resolve." "Or," Hayes said, stepping forward with wide eyes, "he's done something incredible. Look at the glyphs." Everyone turned to look at the walls. The glyphs were forming new messages, flowing like water into fresh patterns. Hay pulled out her tablet and started photographing frantically. "They're changing," she said. "New information, new inscriptions. This is incredible. The temple is revealing things it kept hidden before." Kormaz moved closer, his amphibious features unreadable. "The human has activated the predecessor site. The entire planet is responding. Our sensors are detecting power surges from hundreds of locations across Cathara Prime." "It's not just a temple," Rin said, looking at her own readings. "The whole planet is a machine. A massive installation, and Day just turned it on." Vextal's hand moved to his weapon. "That sword belongs to the coalition. Hand it over, human." Day tried to release the sword just to test his theory. His hand wouldn't open. The weapon was part of him now as much as his arm or his heart. "I can't. It's bonded to me somehow." "Then we'll take it by force." Vextal drew his plasma pistol, but before he could aim it, the sword pulsed again. A wave of energy rippled out from the blade. Not harmful, but undeniable. Every weapon in the chamber powered down instantly. Every piece of technology except the temple itself went dark. In the sudden silence, Hayes' voice rang out clearly. "I can read it. The new inscription. It says the blade has chosen. The inheritor of will shall carry the key to the home of the predecessors. Those who seek the truth must follow in peace or not at all." Day looked down at the sword in his hand, still glowing with inner light. He'd made a choice tonight, and that choice had changed everything. The weight of what came next pressed down on him like a physical force. But as he looked around the chamber at the faces of dozens of alien species, all of them staring at him with shock, anger, awe, or fear, Day knew one thing for certain: there was no going back now. The trials continued for another week. Day stopped counting the failures after 50. Every day brought new species to try their luck. And every day the sword remained unmoved, embedded in its stone altar like it had been there since the beginning of time. Jin Yun arrived on the 27th day. He was from Earth's Defense Council, a military observer with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. He wore his uniform even in the desert heat of Cathara Prime, refusing to show any weakness in front of the alien species around them. Ambassador Na sent me to keep an eye on things, Jin told Day over a meal of rehydrated rations. She's worried about the political situation. Some species are starting to suggest the sword is broken or that the whole thing is a fraud. It's not a fraud, Day said firmly. The temple is real. The sword is real. The glyphs prove it's reading whoever approaches. Maybe, but failure after failure is making people angry. The Soros Collective is particularly upset. Vexthal has been making speeches about how his people deserve first claim on any predecessor technology. Day had noticed the tension growing in the camp. What started as an exciting scientific gathering had turned into something more dangerous. Species were arguing about hierarchy, about who had the right to try first, about what would happen if someone actually succeeded. That evening, Day stood outside the temple with Rin and Jin, watching another attempt. This time it was a being from the Photon Collective, a creature made entirely of solidified light. The glyphs turned bright yellow as it approached, then wrapped itself around the sword. For a moment everyone held their breath. The being pulsed with energy, pouring everything it had into the attempt. The sword trembled, just a fraction of an inch, barely visible. Hope sparked in Day's chest. Then the being screamed a sound like shattering glass and flew backward. It crashed into the far wall of the chamber, its light flickering dangerously. Medical teams rushed in to stabilize it. That's the 7th violent rejection, Jin observed quietly. Do you see the pattern? What pattern? Rin asked. The species that get rejected violently are all the ones that tried to force it. They used brute strength or overwhelming power. The sword doesn't like that. Day considered this. Jin was right. The gentle failures came from species that approached cautiously, respectfully. The violent rejections happened when beings tried to dominate the sword to take it by force. The blade of choosing, Day muttered, remembering Hay's translation. Maybe it has to choose you. You can't just take it. Over the next few days, Day watched the trials with new eyes. He started seeing patterns everywhere. The glyphs didn't just change color randomly. They were reading something specific about each species that approached. The hive species all triggered communal colors, greens and yellows. The Soros and other predator species got reds and oranges. Telepathic species created swirls of purple and blue. It was like the temple was categorizing them, sorting them into groups based on fundamental traits. Hay had been working non-stop on more translations. She called a meeting on the 32nd day, looking even more exhausted than before. I've translated more of the glyphs, she announced. There are inscriptions all around this chamber, not just near the sword. They tell the story of the predecessors. She activated a holographic display showing her work. The predecessors were the first. The very first intelligent species in this galaxy, maybe in the universe. They evolved alone, with no one to guide them, no one to learn from. And they succeeded. They became incredibly advanced. Why did they leave? Lumina asked, her crystalline voice soft. The inscriptions don't say exactly, but they knew they were leaving. So they created tests, challenges, things to find. They scattered them across the galaxy. Each test was designed to identify a specific trait that they valued. And this test identifies what? Vexthal demanded. He looked uncomfortable. That's where the translation gets tricky. The word I keep seeing is related to self-direction, independent choice, the ability to act against programming or instinct, but I'm not sure what that means practically. Ambassador Na was in the audience. She stood up, her face stern. Whatever it means, Earth will not participate in these trials. We've made our position clear. After the meeting, Day found Jin standing near the temple entrance, studying the structure. You've been watching the glyphs closely, Jin said without looking at him. You've noticed something. The white flash, Day admitted. When I approach, the glyphs react differently than for anyone else. I know. I've reviewed all the footage. You're the only one who triggers that sequence. Jin finally turned to face him. Ambassador Na is wrong to forbid you from trying. She's trying to protect Earth's reputation. She's being a coward. Jin's voice was harsh. We're humans, Day. We didn't get to the stars by playing it safe. Our whole history is about people taking chances, making leaps, doing things everyone said were impossible. If I fail publicly, it could hurt Earth's standing in the coalition. And if you don't try, we'll never know if we had a chance to be part of something important. Jin put a hand on Dai's shoulder. I'm military. I know about following orders, but I also know when orders are wrong, Think about it, that night Day couldn't sleep again. He lay in his tent, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything. 43 species had tried to claim the sword. 43 failures. What made him think he could succeed where everyone else had failed? But that white flash. It meant something. He was sure of it now. He heard footsteps outside his tent. Rin's voice called softly, "Are you awake?" "Yeah, come in." She entered carrying her tablet. In the dim light, her face looked worried. "I've been running simulations, analyzing the glyph responses against known biological data for each species. And I found something. The species that trigger the brightest responses all have one thing in common. They're hive minds, collective consciousness, or instinct-driven species. The hive communes, the photon collective, even the Aquarians have a strong communal decision-making process." Day sat up. "What about the species that got dim responses?" "Those are the ones with more individual variation, but even they have strong biological or cultural programming. The Sauros are driven by territorial instincts. The mantis warriors have a rigid caste system. The rock giants are basically slaves to their metabolic needs. So the temple is reading how much free will each species has, maybe, or how much they can act independently of their nature." Rin sat down beside him. "Day, humans are weird. We're one of the only species in the coalition that doesn't have a hive mind or strong instinctual programming. We can choose to go against everything our biology tells us. We can choose to be different. That's what the predecessors were looking for. The ability to choose? The inheritors of will, it makes sense." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, Day could hear the camp settling down for the night. Alien voices in a dozen different languages, the hum of environmental domes, the distant sound of equipment running. "If I try and fail," Day said slowly, "it could be bad for everyone from Earth." "If you try and succeed," Rin countered, "it could change everything." Day thought about Jin's words, about humanity's history of taking chances, about all the times humans had done the impossible simply because they chose to try. "There's going to be another trial tomorrow," he said. "Species number 44. "I know. After they fail, there's going to be a gap in the schedule." "I checked." Rin looked at him steadily. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that sometimes the right choice isn't the safe choice. I'm thinking that maybe I didn't come all the way to Cathera Prime to sit in a tent and watch other people try." A slow smile spread across Rin's face. "You're going to need help. Someone to run interference with security. I know another person who might be willing to help." Day thought of Jin and his words about taking chances. "When? Tomorrow night? After the 44th failure? When everyone is tired and frustrated and not paying attention?" Rin nodded. "I'll talk to Jin. We'll figure out the details." After she left, Day lay back down, but sleep felt impossible now. Tomorrow night he would approach that altar. He would reach for that ancient sword, and he would find out once and for all what the white flash meant. The choice was made. Now he just had to follow through. The supply ship arrived 5 days later, bringing more equipment and 2 new team members from Earth. Day watched it descend through Cathera Prime's thin atmosphere, kicking up clouds of silver dust as it landed near the base camp. Hay Park was the first to step off the ship. She was older than Day, with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen 1,000 ancient ruins. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who had spent 40 years translating dead languages. Behind her rolled several large containers of historical archives. "So show me this impossible temple," she said, shaking Day's hand firmly. The second arrival was unexpected. Council Overseer Kormaz had come personally from the Aquarian Dominion headquarters. His amphibious body glistened with moisture inside his environmental suit, and his large eyes blinked slowly as he surveyed the dig site. "The Coalition takes this discovery very seriously," Kormaz said in his bubbling voice. "A predecessor site could change everything we know about galactic history." Day led them into the temple chamber. Hay stopped dead when she saw the sword, her mouth falling open. Kormaz's skin changed color from blue to purple, which meant he was deeply impressed. "Incredible," Hay breathed. She immediately started photographing the glyphs from every angle, her fingers flying across her tablet. "I've never seen anything like this. The linguistic complexity is staggering." For 3 days, Hay barely slept. She worked around the clock, comparing the temple glyphs to every database of ancient languages humanity had collected. Dee brought her food and made sure she drank water, but nothing could pull her away from her work. On the 4th day, she called everyone together. "I've got something," she announced. Her voice was hoarse from exhaustion, but her eyes blazed with excitement. It's not one language. It's 17. 17 different extinct civilizations, their languages woven together in a pattern. Can you read it? Vextal demanded. Pieces of it. Enough. Hay pulled up a holographic display showing her translation work. The glyphs around the sword tell a story. Or maybe a prophecy. Listen to this. She cleared her throat and read from her notes. In the time of endings, when the predecessors must depart, we leave behind the blade of choosing. Only the inheritors of will may claim it. Those who lack the gift shall find it immovable as the mountains, unyielding as the void. Silence filled the chamber. Even the usual hum of the temple seemed quieter. Inheritors of will? Lumina repeated, her crystalline body pulsing thoughtfully. What does that mean? I'm not entirely sure, Hay admitted. The word I'm translating as will could also mean choice or self-direction or even independence. The predecessor language is incredibly precise, but some concepts don't translate well. Kormaz stepped forward, his suit making soft sloshing sounds. This is a matter for the Coalition Council. If the predecessors left a test, then all member species should have the opportunity to attempt it. You mean try to pull the sword? Rin asked. Precisely. We will organize a gathering. Representatives from every major species in the Coalition will come to Cathera Prime. We will document each attempt thoroughly. This must be done properly, scientifically. Over the next 2 weeks, ships began arriving from across the galaxy. The small dig site transformed into a crowded base camp filled with beings from dozens of different worlds. Day had never seen so many species in one place. There were the mantis warriors from Klendathu, towering insectoid beings with razor-sharp claws. The cloud singers came, gaseous entities that floated in containment fields and communicated through musical tones. Rock giants from the heavy worlds lumbered in, each one standing 12 feet tall and weighing several tons. Each new arrival meant another set of tents, another environmental dome, another cultural protocol to navigate. The human delegation grew too. Ambassador Nayli arrived with a security detail, immediately pulling Day aside for a private conversation. Do not attempt to pull that sword, she said firmly. Earth is still new to the Coalition. We can't afford to fail publicly. If you try and can't move it, we'll look weak. Understand? Day nodded, but he felt a twist of disappointment in his gut. The white flash still haunted his thoughts. He spent his evenings with Rin discussing what it might mean. Every species triggers one color, Rin said, showing him the data they'd collected. The Sorrows get red. Crystalline beings get white with rainbows. Aquarians get blue. Gaseous beings get green. It's like the temple is categorizing them. But I got multiple colors. You got a sequence. That's different. That's like the temple was surprised or confused or processing something unexpected. They were interrupted by Theron, an insectoid historian from the hive communes. He skittered over on 6 legs, his antennae twitching with excitement. I have found references, he chittered. Old references in the hive archives. Stories about the predecessors. They were said to have seeded the galaxy with life, with potential. And they left tests, keys, puzzles. Things meant to be found when species reached a certain level of development. What kind of tests? Dai asked. That's the mystery. The stories say each test was different, designed to identify specific worthy traits. But the predecessors vanished before anyone could understand their purpose. The formal trials began on the 15th day. Kormaz had set up recording equipment and a proper ceremony. Each species would send their strongest, wisest, or most capable representative to attempt to claim the sword. First came the mantis warriors. Their champion approached the altar with confidence, his massive claws flexing. The glyphs turned orange as he grasped the sword's hilt. He pulled. The sword didn't budge. He pulled harder, his exoskeleton creaking with effort. Nothing. After 5 minutes of straining, he stepped back, defeated. Next came the cloud singers. One of their kind floated down, extending tendrils of gas to wrap around the sword. The glyphs turned green. The cloud singer pulsed and vibrated, pouring energy into the attempt. The sword remained perfectly still. A rock giant tried. Then a telepathic mindweaver. Then a cyborg from the machine collective, its mechanical enhancements whirring and clicking. One by one, representatives from 40 different species attempted to move the sword. One by one, they all failed. Some failures were gentle. The sword simply wouldn't move no matter how much strength or power or psychic energy they applied. But some failures were violent. 3 species were thrown backward by an invisible force as if the sword itself rejected them. One warrior ended up in the medical tent with burns on his hands, though he'd never touched anything hot. Day watched it all, feeling a growing sense of unease. The glyphs showed different colors for each species, sometimes bright, sometimes dim, but never once did they flash white. Never once did they show that rapid sequence he'd triggered. On the 20th day, after the 40th species failed, Day found Rin sitting outside her tent, staring at her data tablet. "It's not about strength," she said without looking up, "or psychic power or technology. The sword is testing something else. Something intrinsic." "What do you mean?" "I mean biology. Or psychology. Or maybe both." She finally looked at him and her expression was intense.
"Day, I think the white flash means something."
"I think maybe humans have something the predecessors were looking for. Ambassador Na forbade me from trying. I know. But what if this is important? What if this is bigger than politics?" Day looked toward the temple. The sword waited inside, ancient and mysterious and impossible. Somewhere in his gut he knew Rin was right. The white flash meant something. He just didn't know if he had the courage to find out what. The dust of Cathera Prime had a strange color. It wasn't brown or red like the deserts back on Earth. It was silver, almost like crushed diamonds scattered across an endless wasteland. Daekang brushed some of it off his equipment scanner and squinted at the readings. 3 years of digging on this dead planet and they finally found something worth the trip. "Day, you need to see this." Rin Choi's voice crackled through his helmet speaker. She sounded excited, which was rare. Rin never got excited about rocks and ruins anymore. Not after 3 years of finding nothing but broken pottery and collapsed buildings. Day climbed over a pile of ancient rubble and stopped. His breath caught in his throat. The temple was massive. It rose from the ground like a mountain of black stone, perfectly smooth despite millions of years of erosion. The entrance stood at least 50 feet tall, carved with symbols that seemed to shift and change when he looked at them directly. The whole structure hummed with a low frequency that Day could feel in his bones. "How did we miss this?" he asked. "It was underground," Rin said, walking up beside him. Her dark eyes were wide behind her helmet visor. The scanning equipment couldn't detect it through all the rock layers. The earthquake last week must have exposed it. Other members of the expedition team were gathering now. Vexthal, the reptilian leader from the Saros Collective, moved forward on his powerful legs. His scales gleamed green and gold in the alien sunlight. Behind him came Lumina, a being made entirely of living crystal that refracted light into rainbow patterns across the ground. "Fascinating." Lumina's voice rang like wind chimes. "The architectural style matches no known civilization in the galactic records." Vexthal hissed softly, which meant he was thinking hard. "We proceed with caution. Document everything. This could be a predecessor site." Day felt a chill run down his spine. The predecessors were a legend, a myth that every spacefaring species whispered about, an ancient race that supposedly existed millions of years before any current civilization. Most scientists thought they were just stories. But standing here, looking at this impossible temple, Day wasn't so sure anymore. The team spent hours setting up lights and sensors around the entrance. As the twin suns of Cathera Prime began to set, they finally stepped inside. The interior took Day's breath away. The walls were covered in glowing glyphs, thousands of them, pulsing with soft blue light. The corridor stretched forward into darkness, but their lights revealed intricate carvings of beings that looked like no species Day had ever seen. Some had wings, others had multiple limbs, and some seemed to be made of pure energy. "These symbols," Rin whispered, running her gloved hand just above the surface without touching. "They're not like anything in my database. It's as if someone combined elements from 100 different dead languages." They walked deeper into the temple. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, circular and domed. In the center stood an altar made of the same black stone as the temple walls. And embedded in that altar, pointing straight up toward the ceiling, was a sword. Day moved closer, forgetting protocol, forgetting caution. The sword was beautiful. Its blade seemed to be made of metal, but it shimmered with colors that shifted from silver to gold to deep purple. The hilt was wrapped in some kind of material that looked almost organic, like ancient leather, but it showed no signs of decay. "Nobody touch it," Vexthal commanded. "We scan first." For the next hour, the team ran every test they could think of. The results made no sense. The sword's material composition didn't match anything in the galactic database. Carbon dating suggested it was at least 10 million years old, maybe older. The energy readings fluctuated wildly, spiking and dropping with no pattern. But the strangest thing happened when team members approached the altar. The glyphs surrounding it began to glow brighter, cycling through different colors depending on who got close. When Vexthal approached, the glyphs turned deep crimson. When Lumina floated near, they shifted to brilliant white with streaks of rainbow light. Other team members triggered different colors: orange, green, yellow, violet. When Day stepped forward, the glyphs flashed through a rapid sequence. Blue, then gold, then a brief pulse of pure white before settling back to the standard blue. He noticed Rin watching with intense focus. "Did you see that?" he asked her quietly. "The white flash?" "Yes, it only happened with you." Day looked at the sword again. There was something about it that called to him, though he couldn't explain why. It looked like it belonged in someone's hand, not stuck in stone. The hilt seemed perfectly sized for a human grip, which was strange because humans were relatively new to the galactic community. This sword was ancient beyond measure. Vexthal called the team together. "We will establish a base camp here. This chamber must be studied thoroughly before we attempt any removal of artifacts. The Coalition Council must be informed immediately." As the team began setting up equipment, Day couldn't stop staring at the sword. Rin stood beside him, her scientific mind clearly racing. "What do you think it means?" Day asked. "The different colors. I think," Rin said slowly, "that the temple is testing us, reading us somehow. Maybe biological signatures, maybe something else. But why would an ancient temple care about who we are? That's what we need to find out." That night, Day couldn't sleep. His small tent was pitched just outside the temple entrance, and he kept thinking about that white flash. Every other species triggered one color, maybe two. But when he approached, the glyphs went wild for just a moment. He pulled up his tablet and started reviewing the footage his helmet camera had recorded. Frame by frame, he watched the glyphs react to his presence. The sequence was fast, but it was definitely there. Blue, gold, white, blue. 4 distinct pulses. Rin's tent light was still on. He could see her shadow moving inside, probably running the same analysis he was. They had been research partners for 5 years, ever since Earth joined the Galactic Coalition. She knew him well enough to know he wouldn't sleep until he had answers. Dee looked up at the alien stars above Cathera Prime. Somewhere out there, the beings who built this temple were gone, but they left something behind. Something important enough to preserve for millions of years, and somehow, impossibly, that something had reacted to him differently than anyone else. He didn't know what it meant yet, but Day had a feeling that everything was about to change.